Hey, I'm Lou Brutus. Always a pleasure to welcome to the show or to Zoom or to the phone or to the studio, although that doesn't happen too much these days. Ayron Jones. Good to see you, man. How are you?
What's going on, Lou? How you doing, man?
Tell me about Seattle these days. Tell me about your hometown. Tell me about how everybody is getting by.
I think for the most part, Seattle's in a really good place and has been doing pretty well. I think despite a lot of the polarized press the city's gotten over the summer, I think the overall attitude and health of Seattle is still in a pretty good place, man. So I think we're all doing good.
And what about the music scene specifically, which you and I have discussed before? The music scene there did not start with grunge and Nirvana. The music scene there goes back to early rock and roll bands in the 1960s, and there's a great patchwork of bands that and artists who have worked with each other through these many years.
Yeah, the music scene is doing pretty all right, man. I'm still in touch with a lot of the indie stuff that goes on here. And I think that's been the hardest part for a lot of people in Seattle. I mean, obviously there's a wealth gap that has been accumulated over time here, and unfortunately, a lot of the independent musicians in Seattle fall below that wealth gap or on the lower side of the wealth gap. So people are struggling, I think, right now in terms of the music scene. But I think there's still a lot of hope. And I think there's still a lot of interest in trying to prop it up by artists who have made their way and kind of found their way on the other side and doing well right now. So we'll kind of see what happens here in the near future. But I think Seattle's music scene will be here to last.
And one last thing about the local scene, Seattle kind of went through a very difficult process for artists of all kind, be they music or visual artists, what have you, that other cities have gone through. Seattle was a good place for artists to go because it wasn't incredibly expensive at one time, but like San Francisco and maybe more recently Austin, Texas, these were great artist meccas, and then they became really popular with everybody else, and it drove the rents up and drove all the artists out. Is that still a problem in the downtown area? Or are people kind of maybe going to the peripheries, or what's it like?
It's definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people, artists are moving out to the peripheries, moving out to the suburbs and things like that, where rent's a little more affordable, where you can still make a living and play music. Seattle's an interesting place for music because you can make a decent living playing music here, even if it's just on an independent level. You can do 5 shows in a night and make $100 5 days a week and still be able to afford a little bit of living here and there. But as that wealth gap keeps getting larger and larger, you're noticing people kind of moving out to the outskirts. And the scene is definitely changed a lot, especially with a lot of what's been going on with the tech industry moving into Seattle and Amazon and Microsoft and such. And so yeah, people are trying to make their way. They're trying to keep their heads above water here, but it's been tough.
Now, how, if I may pry, how has your physical health been through all this, and how has your mental health been? Because I think everybody, no matter what they do for a living, has had their ups and downs through this thing, whether it's gaining weight or some people are having difficulties with falling back into substance abuse or just going stir crazy. How has everything been with yourself, and how are you making do?
Oh, I've been pretty good, man. I have a long history of practicing mental practices, meditation, and things like that, and learning how to cope and get through time periods like this. So I think mentally, I've been pretty good. I've definitely had a few ups and downs. My physical health, I'm in really great physical shape right now, and been able to work out and keep myself going. And the one thing I wish I could do is probably play more guitar. You know what I mean? I picked up a guitar the other day and started jamming with a buddy of mine. My wrist starts locking up, and I'm like, I'm out of practice, But but in terms of my physical health, man, I'm in great physical shape, man. I got a pull-up bar here. I'm always doing push-ups, and I'm getting outside and making sure that I'm healthy and ready to go as soon as things open back up and get back on the road.
So apparently, only your hand and wrists are out of shape.
Yeah, that's about it. My body's in pretty good shape. I played ultimate frisbee for a number of years, so my running health is still high up there, man. I can still run pretty good.
And then one last quick aside down this road, when you talk about the sort of mental and physical things you do to keep yourself in shape, are there any, brief tips you can give to people in regard to, you should try an hourly yoga class a week, or what are some of the things that people can start off with to make themselves better?
So find some time for serenity. You know what I'm saying? Find some time to where you can just be alone with yourself and cut the rest of the outside world out. especially in this world of social media and things like that. You know, when you're looking at your phone all the time and always interested in what's going on in the internet universe,
Yeah, sure.
you find that consuming your mind and your brain. And you know, one thing that I watched that Michael Jordan documentary recently, and it talked about how his coach had taught him to be as present as possible, and that's part of what made him great, was that he was always present. And so finding ways to shut out the outside world and to be present in your space and in your mind, I think that's really important. And then keeping inside, getting inside your body. You know, your ability to get outside, take a walk, or, you know, I know it's kind of hard with COVID going on, but like getting outside, taking a walk, doing something physical to remind yourself, your brain, that there's a body that needs your attention. So I think those two things will get you through, and you know, and not stressing out, man. I mean, just kind of just having faith that everything's going to work out. That's also really helpful. Keep the stress on a low level.
Do you listen to music ever to unwind?
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely listen to music. My thing's video games. I love like I'll zone out on video games
What are you
and
playing?
I play Rocket League. One of the nerdiest games you can play. Rocket League and Madden are my two games. They're like the only two I play because it's mind numbing. I don't have to be that into it to play it. I can just turn it off, you know, rather than getting into something super competitive or something that I'm really, really into. These are
Yeah,
games I can
yeah.
just kind of turn on and zone out for a minute. And, you know, especially with having working on an album, I have to listen to a lot of my own stuff. And it's a good time for me to be able to unwind and unplug and go ahead and get deep into my stuff, you know. So that's typically what I've been doing.
You ever have those nights where you like sit back on the couch and it's like 10:30 and you've gotten stuff done that day and you start to zone out to a game, and the next thing you know it's like 5:34 in the morning and you're like, "Oh man."
Oh yeah, I've done that plenty of times and got yelled at for it because my wife doesn't appreciate it. You know, so yeah, I've definitely found myself in those situations, going to bed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, doing nothing but playing video games and wasting my time. So yeah.
Yeah, from what I've best been able to tell, you know, it's music, movies, and gaming for a number of people, and certainly when I look at songs from this last year that really sort of speak to the time, and not just to COVID, but to every other cockamamie mindfuck thing going on.
Yeah.
Mercy is one of the best songs that there is, and
Oh my God, thank you.
if you would give me some background on that song, because it's a great tune and you can tap your foot to it, but man, there's some heavy shit going on in this.
Yeah, man. Well, Mercy. You know, I wrote that song with Scott Stevens and Marty Fredrickson, and you know, a lot of the lyrical content for me really came from just this tumultuous year that we all went through, just as Americans, and not even just from the social movements, but just kind of dealing with COVID and a lot of the political things that were going on. We had our democracy tested, you know, and in probably one of the heaviest ways that it's been tested in a long, long time in my generation, in my lifetime, and probably many people's lifetime. We never thought we would see anything like that happen, you know. And so it was just a lot going on this year, and I thought it was really, really important for the world to get the perspective of your typical everyday American on what it was like just living through this time period and telling that story, you know. And you know, and also, you know, obviously as a Black American, there's also a little there too. You know, there's a lot of social justice stuff that was happening, and you know, I saw a lot of conflict, and you know, in that first line, and not just conflict, but in that first line when I talk about, you know, got me on my knees, too much smoke, can't breathe. That line really was inspired by the fact that, you know, at one point here in Seattle, the whole city was blanketed by a toxic cloud of smoke because of the fires all over the West Coast. You know, so climate change had really hit us in the face hard. And just to add on top of the many lives lost due to COVID, on top of the social justice issues, on top of all these things that were happening at one time, I thought it was so important for us to have a song in America that, and just the world, that reminded us of how strong we are, and how many redeeming qualities this country has, and the fact that we've gone through all of these things and we're still standing here right now. The flag is still there, you know. I thought that was so important to say that without saying it in so many words, you know, without trying to be overly cliche or overly patriotic about you know, America. I wanted to tell that story, and I wanted people to really be able to relate to that from all walks of life, no matter what side of the coin you're on. That, you know, as hard as things have gotten, and as hard and as much as we've been tested in this past year, we're still here, man. We're still here. We're not going anywhere.
Is it ever, I don't know what word to use, perhaps trickier to take serious subject matter like Mercy and turn it into a catchy song? Because you still want to entertain people. You still want a good vehicle for these ideas that will catch the ear and the imagination of people. Is it ever hard to find that right music to match heavy lyrical content like this?
It can be, luckily I mentioned Marty and Scott, Marty Frederson and Scott Stevens. I mean, it can be, but when you're in a room with cats that have been there before, it makes the process a lot easier. You know what I'm saying? When we can collaborate and bring all of our ideas to the table, it kind of expedites that process. And I have many years now of songwriting, and so it can be a little tricky to take those songs because you don't want to sound corny, man. You don't want to do what's been done before, and especially when you're talking about America, because I feel like there's a lot of songs about America that have been done over and over and over again, and you don't want to make it sound cliche. But you also, you want to be able to tell a story, make it very obvious about what you're talking about, and and just let loose. I mean, part of my philosophy with music has always been, let yourself become unhinged. Don't put yourself in a box when it comes to writing. And I think that's why Mercy kind of turned out the way it did, was because we didn't approach it in this typical way of writing a song and saying that these parts need to be put in these certain sections. We kind of just were like, this, what does it feel like, and how are we going to get this point across? So I think that really helped a lot when it came to the rhythm and kind of making a catchy tune that still had a message.
Are there any musical touchstones that you can think of that you can point to as good examples of material with a strong social message or a strong political message that still rocks pretty good? Maybe by way of first example, Evil Empire from Rage Against the Machine. I can't believe it's 25 years now, which makes me feel really old. But that's an album that I think you're a pretty big fan of.
Huge fan of that album. That's one of my favorite albums of all time, easily. And obviously, I mean, Rage Against the Machine, anything Rage Against the Machine has done has always been done a great job of bringing across this political message, but still making this music that rocked really hard and paid homage to the history of itself. I always say that Rage Against the Machine, though, it wouldn't be anything without the Beastie Boys. So there's a number of bands I can think of in that era. And especially, let's even look at some of the black rock bands. Think about Fishbone, you think about Bad Brains, you think even Parliament Funkadelic, like that. I mean, these are all bands I can think of that really brought across this political message and still made their music widely available and consumable by people that maybe typically didn't listen to that kind of music, man. And there's no better way to send a message than to be able to do that.
I don't know if I can recall it all off the top of my head, but I'm going to try just for fun. Good evening. Do not attempt to adjust your radio. There is nothing wrong. We will return it to you as soon as you are groovy. Welcome to radio station WEFUNK, better known as We Funk, or deeper still, the Mothership Connection, home of the extraterrestrial brothers, dealers in funky music, P-Funk, Uncut Funk, of the bomb. I could go on from there with the rest of it, but
see, that's why you're the Sonic Warrior, my man.
Want to say again?
I said that's why you're the Sonic Warrior, my man.
I had to do that for George Clinton a couple of times. We had a friend in common, and he said, "Do the thing for George," and I'm like, "No, man, I don't want to do that now." And George was like, "No, do it." And I'm, all right, and sat through that.
That's amazing, man. That was incredible. That made my day right there, man. Yeah. These are bands that have sent this, made a huge stamp in the music world and still sent the message and created progress. In a lot of ways, I think musicians have more of a responsibility and artists have more responsibility to the public that I think that even politicians do, because we're not bound by the rules of politicians. We're bound by the rules of the people, and I think it's really important for us to continue to unite.
How do you feel? Because I find it as a music fan of all kinds of music. Sometimes the stuff I love the most is just stupid, woo, and other times it's very serious and has a very deep heart to it. How do you feel when somebody says, "Oh, shut up and sing your songs. We don't want to hear about politics or social justice or anything"? I mean, what do you say to somebody like that?
I say thanks. It's America, man. You probably get it. America yourself on. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, what's America without opinions and people to disagree? When in the history of this country have we ever agreed on anything? Anything? that's the point of democracy, man. Is you're not going to have people that agree with what you have to say all the time, and it's perfectly fine for them to express that to you. But if you stay true to what your heart says, man, then nothing's really going to stop you. And I don't mind it, man. It doesn't bother me any. That's like that's their agenda. Their prerogative, as
Yeah.
a great band once said. That's their prerogative. And you wish that people would kind of get on board with the message, but you're never going to have everyone do that. 100% is a lie. There's no such thing as 100%. The best you're ever going to do is 80-20 or 90-10. And you need that 20%, you need that 10% to fuel the 80. You got to create that flow. I always think of it like, when you take a straw and you put it in water, you put your thumb on that straw, the water is going to trickle out, and that's a trickling effect. And that's because like you have all this content here, and you pull your thumb from that straw and it flows through. That 10%, that 20% is what helps create that flow. We need that ebb and flow to keep it going, man. So no, it doesn't bother me any, man. Part of I think what the issue is in this common era, in this common time period, is that everyone wants to react to everything instead of just moving, continuing to flow and move forward, and if we stop to react to every single thing that somebody disagrees with, every single thing that somebody says, then we're putting more focus on the negative energy rather than what we're trying to do as positive beings, So I think it's really important for us to keep moving forward and actually embrace the negativity for what it is. It's just fuel.
You said something interesting earlier in trying to sort of put this current time and being a citizen in it into perspective. I've been thinking about some of the same things lately. I've been reading Eric Larson's latest book, The Splendid and the Vile. Eric Larson writes true life historic novels where he, gets the original letters of whom he's writing about or the conversations, and he pieces the history back together again. Devil in the White City, about the mass murderer who was at the Chicago World's Fair, was probably his most famous. Splendid and the Vile is about Winston Churchill in his first year as prime minister during World War II. And that got me thinking about, well, I used to try and put myself in the shoes of people who got through things like World War II, or who got through the First World War or the Great Depression. And I thought, well, man, I'm really lucky to have never had to do anything like that. And then I realized we're kind of in the middle of something like that, not exactly like it, but like that now. So to folks who are trying to make the best of their situation, whatever it might be, with all of this myriad of problems around us, what do you tell them? Just person to person, not even a musician. What do you tell them person to person about persevering through all this?
Do what makes you happy without fear. And I think that's really important. One of the things that I think about when it comes to myself, even just in my music career and even being here, I have been doing, playing music now full time for almost 10 years, and this is my first go around with the major record labels. This is the first time I've actually been able to be funded to be able to play music in this way. And before that, it was my own grind. And, if I didn't play, I didn't eat. And for a long time before that, I worked a bunch of jobs I hated, and I was miserable. I really wasn't making much more money than I was really, playing music at the time. So, I hit this point one day where it was, I thought to myself, like, are you happy? Like what are you doing? You don't even really have stability. You're just doing what everyone says to do, which is just working this job every single day. And it's miserable. You hate it. You're not really putting yourself into it. You're not really moving forward. You're not going anywhere. You're running in circles. So are you happy? And it wasn't until I really dived into my happiness that I realized that the potential for this greatness that I didn't realize before, and then money wasn't a factor anymore. It stopped being a big thing because I just kept going to doing the things that made me happy, which is playing music. So I think it's just really important, I think, to get through this time period, just find out what makes you happy, even just the littlest, tiniest things, and just do that. Just do it without fear of what could happen if you don't. You know what I mean? I think that that's really important. I think a lot of people, especially in American society, we're just taught to work, and hard work pays off. Hard work pays off. hard work can pay off, sure, but happiness is what really pays off, man. Is when you find yourself in a place to where you're doing something, waking up with purpose every single day, and fulfillment every single day. That's ultimately what's going to get you through anything, and nothing can bring you down because you have your thing always. So I think it's just really important for people to just find that thing that makes them happy and continue to do that over and over again.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest advice is the best. What should I do? Well, do what you like. And if you can turn a buck at it, which you can probably do in the United States, because for all of its faults, and there are many, it is still the land of opportunity. You can turn a buck in this country doing anything if you'll hustle enough. So figure out your angle and move forward, and you'll probably have a happy life.
Well, TikTok and YouTube was a testament to that, isn't it? You know, what I mean? Like these kids are able to get on these platforms and make money, make thousands and millions of dollars just
with cat videos or falling off the back of their Buick.
Exactly, doing almost nothing, and it's amazing, it's amazing, and I think that's ultimately what's going to get people through this time period. You got to find that thing that just makes you happy, and go do it. Even if it's the little things, and it isn't always easy, because when you find yourself in a negative space, you find yourself coming back to the negative space. Even when things start to look up a little bit, you find yourself like being a pessimist about the opportunities you have, about the good nature of things that are happening, and it gets hard to continue to stay in that happy space. So no one ever goes hot and cold are literally the same thing. They're the same thing. They're different degrees of the same thing. So, it's important to take those gradual steps to find your happiness. So even if it's a little day, waking up and just being thankful for things, waking up and doing that one thing that makes you happy little by little and more every single day. And soon enough, you'll find yourself in this happy space that you didn't even realize was there, So I think that's just really important.
One last thing, and aside to something you mentioned before, you said you had jobs that you just hated. We've all had them. Give me some examples of those jobs you hated. And just so you know, I'll when you're done, I'll throw in a couple of my own, just so you don't think I'm trying to dog you on it or anything.
No, it's all good, man. I worked a lot of different security jobs. I was the one I hated the absolute most was working as a loss prevention detective for Whole Foods in Seattle, which is basically you just you go undercover and try to find people shoplifting.
Oh man, that's got to wear you down.
God, it was terrible, and especially someone like myself. In my brain, at one point in my life, I thought I wanted to be a police officer, and that was until I discovered weed. And then I was like, maybe this is better than policing.
Marijuana came and the handcuffs went away.
Yeah, I was like, oh wow, this is the new life right here, man. But you'd come across people that were just petty crimes, and they're stealing from these corporations. You say, grand theft is over $1,000, right? And so you've catch somebody for doing grand theft to a corporation that's making billions in a year, and what is that really doing to the corporation? It doesn't really do anything to the corporation, but here you are about to ruin somebody's life, or technically ruin their own life, but you're about to basically execute, and you're about to execute. Enact laws in order to affect their life in a great way. And I hated that, man. I worked security there. More fun jobs I had, though. I did work some cool jobs, like working security at the Westin Hotel was cool. I got to meet Barack Obama a couple of times.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, doing that.
Harry's a nice guy.
He's a great guy. I only said what's up to him twice, man. And the second time he was too cool. He had his phone. He was like, hey, man. I was like, Barack, yeah, man. He was like, yeah, right here, bro. All right, man. All right. And then I worked security at the space station. That was my favorite job. That was actually the last real job. 2 jobs I worked was loss prevention detective, and then at the top of the space needle. So that was it, man. Those are the junctures, and those are the things that I couldn't stand them. And all the while, I'm playing bars and clubs at this time. So I'm like really trying to figure out how to make it. And I hit a point, when I was just like, you just got to go do this one thing that you can do over and over again, man. So those were the jobs I hated.
Well, again, just so you don't feel I'm dogging on you, I worked as a cook's assistant in a nursing home. So I have pureed every vegetable known to God and man.
Man, yeah.
I was a bus boy at a New Jersey diner, and it was right by the Freehold, New Jersey horse racing track. So when the races would let out, it was like a scene from Goodfellas.
Oh, no.
In the diner. Like it was all, hey, kid, hey, good kid. It's just everybody was mobbed up, Right. But they all tipped really good. So, I had no problem.
That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah, just so long as I had money to pay for my concert tickets and all the albums I wanted to buy, I was fine.
See, I never mind organized crime and gangsters, man. I mean, I know there's a connotation that goes with that. There's certain evils that come along with that, but
You know,
as a kid, I am a child of a gangster. My dad he was a gangster disciple, and which is a big gang out of Chicago, but there's
yeah.
different branches. He was a gangster disciple out of Seattle, man. So I have a lot of family that's been gang affiliated and locked up and stuff, and I just never, just from the socioeconomic standpoint, when you see if you look at it from that perspective, you can understand why people would go into that lifestyle, So I never got that like you're a bad person ideology or thoughts about gangsters. I always kind of admired them for finding a way to make a living through, by any means necessary. I thought that was always kind of cool. I never liked the violence though. I don't want to endorse any of that stuff or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, I understand.
But
Yeah,
like I always really admired people that were able to do that, and no matter what, and take care of their families and all sorts of stuff.
yeah. I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey, so everybody knew somebody. Everybody was mobbed up.
Yeah.
They were fine guys for us. We didn't know the money, so there's
Right.
no problem.
Right.
If you owe them money, then
Yeah.
then
That's
that's
not a
your
problem.
that's your own fault.
Oh yeah.
You brought that on yourself.
Exactly, man. Yeah, I never got that. I never got that. Those feelings about gangsters, man. I always thought to myself, like, it's kind of cool to be a gangster. I never thought it was necessarily a bad thing. I thought it was cool that these cats, even though the stuff they were doing was illegal, they were still finding ways to make a living and take care of their families and stuff. Especially being black in America in the 80s and 90s, man. Like that was a really
Yeah.
tough time. That was a really tough time, and I'm a product of that myself, So yeah.
Well, you are certainly a part of the long, long line of great musicians who have come from Seattle and the Pacific Northwest, and I'm always glad to speak to you. I wish you well.
Thank you, Lou. The same to you, my man. Thank you for having me.